So, call the monthly finance committee meeting order at 1 o'clock. Are there any changes to the agenda? And 1 page today.
I know.
So no changes.
All right. Approval of the minutes from the September meeting. Any get a chance to look at those? Good. All right, we have a motion to send that to consent.
Yes,
Second.
This is in contrast to the other meeting that's later today.
I know.
It's like 3 times.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Is there any public comment today? Let's see anything here. Okay. And before we get to the finance statements, I just thought I would take a moment as the treasurer of the committee and chairman of the committee to formally welcome Amy as our new controller and
Welcome, Amy.
welcome Amy. And
Great.
Thank you.
Carrie, we need to get her a camera. She has a camera.
I don't, and I don't want one. Thank you.
It's a camera microphone combo, so.
I think it'd be much better to have her picture rather than mine.
Okay, well,
Or you're more than welcome to walk down.
well, absolutely. Welcome to come to the committee meetings in person.
We love in-person meetings.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome.
Steps, everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, welcome Amy, and I also just want to reiterate Barbara Figueroa for all her years of service.
Absolutely.
So, okay, with that, we'll move on to the September monthly financial report. We'll start with the unaudited financial statements. So Dave, welcome.
Thank you, John. And I expected to be presenting this from Texas, but we postponed that trip a couple weeks, so we're still back to presenting it from my office at home here. So we're through the first quarter, through September, and we're going to start on page 6. Whoops. Did I just lose the connection?
You just reload it again, yeah. Reshare it.
Reshare it and try again. Okay. And there we go. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
All right. So on page 6, we're going to start on line 8, which is the acute patient days. For the month of September, 122. Budget 111, and last year's September was 108. So we beat budget and beat prior year on the acute side, which is a good trend. We've been a little slower than for the summer, and now it's good to see the end of the first quarter finishing strong. Still a little bit behind year to date compared to last year, but pretty close to the volumes that we had in acute a year ago. Moving down to row 15, I mostly want to keep my eye on our average length of stay, because by requirements, we have to stay below 4.0 as a critical access hospital. We had the COVID waiver that's no longer in effect, so we do have to adhere to that standard, and we are in okay shape. Little bit below, not much below, but a little bit there at 3.89 year to date average length of stay. So we're okay on that statistic. I wanted to spend the rest of my time on this particular sheet to just make a general comment that we're still not doing as well as we'd like on overall volumes for the first quarter and even in September. And the areas that I want to highlight that have contributed to our revenues not being as high as we'd like them to be, we're going to start with row 28, and we're going to see a real low number here on the average census that we had in long-term care. We think we've bottomed out now, and we should be heading back up again, and hopefully we'll never get down this low again, but you can see that number of 38.3 for the long-term care unit. Year to date, we're showing 40 census compared to 46 a year ago. So that's 14% drop even from a year ago. So like I said, hopefully we've bottomed out. We feel good about what we're seeing recently since the beginning of October, the census going up significantly. So with a few others that are pending admission. So we're hoping that we've hit bottom there, but that has contributed to our financial picture in terms of gross revenues and charges and the amounts coming into the organization. The other areas that of lower volume, we have not achieved the growth that we were hoping for and projected, starting on rows 39, 40, and 41, and the surgeries. You can see the numbers there are not real good yet. What we aren't going to do is we aren't going to bring in a doctor and pay him a high amount of salary when we don't have any guarantees of volume. So other hospitals have made the mistake of signing large lucrative contracts for surgeons to come in and have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars without any kind of guaranteed return. So Tim is being careful and hoping we can put together the right kind of package and find the right physician willing to come up that we don't have to pay an arm and a leg for as a guarantee. So that's why that hasn't materialized yet. And line items 39 to 40, you can see those numbers are still not really there. No GI business has come back either. And we may, in our strategic plan, we may want to look at that square footage and find alternative uses for the surgery department that maybe is more relevant, that would bring in some revenues more than we're getting right now. And that might be an opportunity for us to relook at how we're using that square footage and maybe in a different capacity. I don't know. Do you want to make any comments, Tim?
Yeah, no, we're looking at all options. I think, what we're saying, the trend is in the rurals anyway, is a lot of them are beginning to drop their surgery because the volumes just aren't there, with the expenses that you've got to pay to cover those services for overhead.
There's some other things that we can do, outpatient wound care, outpatient infusion therapies, things
Do
like
they need a
that.
really good sink?
Apparently they do,
Per CDPH.
according to CPH.
That's ridiculous.
True.
But luckily it was only like $5,000 or $6,000.
This semester we're talking about. Right?
Yes, no, surgery
itself.
unit
Oh,
itself.
surgery itself.
Yeah. So, yeah, Mark and I have had a number of conversations about it, Dave and I as well, about just, and we're getting a team together to kind of look at some of these things and come up with some ideas and solutions that we think are going to work for us and that are actually going to generate revenue.
Did you say wound care?
Yeah,
Wound care is one that we can do. Yeah, absolutely.
we can do wound care, we can do infusion therapy if we can get the medications compounded before they get here. 'Cause we don't have a surgery department a pharmacy that can compound those kinds of meds.
And there are services, matter of fact, Memorial has actually offered their service that we used before, that if we have, because they do that level of compounding.
I had another nurse reach out to me and want to be the manager of our outpatient services department too. You know what I'm talking about.
Melinda.
The one that was there before. She called me the other day.
No.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen though.
Okie dokie.
So those are all opportunities going forward.
Yes, sir.
The good news, as you'll see later, year to date, we're showing a positive bottom line despite these negatives on the volume. So after we succeed in solving the volume issues, that we should be really back in good shape again overall. Any questions before I move off of page 6? Comments? I'm going to move up to page 8. And we're still showing an excellent financial strength index of 3.12. We are looking at pretty much flat volumes in ER, but gradually going up. Continued good strength in the ER is not one of our problems as it relates to volume. ER is an exception to that. We do
the ER volumes kind of go up during the flu season. I'm not trying to be more morbid or anything about it. It's just the nature of
That's
it.
why everybody was lamenting on our CEO call the other day when the county health department was forecasting a slow or no.
Flu season.
Yeah. I said,
Yes.
no,
I'll
good
talk
business.
about that in my report.
Exactly.
typically what we see is we're entering the season, a good season for acute days. This is back last year, November, December, January. You can see that was their highest period. That 3 months, we're going right into that period again. So we should also see some good volumes on the acute side with the flu season and those kind of things. So that might be something we can expect at least over the next quarter or so in volumes. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about cash flow, even though if you look at the current month, which is the second column to the far right, which shows a lower cash balance in the green ending cash balance. One point I want to make is the wild fluctuations we're seeing on a month-to-month and quarter-to-quarter basis this current fiscal year, and it's due to two major things that cause that fluctuation. One is higher capital spending as it relates to us getting that emergency generator, that $3 million spent, which is obviously going to take money off our cash balances. And then the other is the timing and the fluctuations and higher balances that we expect to collect on IGT payments. And where that shows up is this IGT and other supplemental line, about the fifth line down. By quarter, we should be getting a big $2.8 million check-in. Actually, I just sent Current Health System an email. It said that was due November 2nd. So we should get a really large IGT payment the next week or so from them. And then this is, I believe, a March IGT amount for over $11 million. So we really have these fluctuations that cause our balances. But the key balance that matters the most to me is how we finish the end of the year. And that number right now looks really good, mostly due to the updated calculations I've made based on what we now believe is the amounts we're going to receive on the IGTs, which is higher than what we had in the budget. So the good news is, if you look at the budget column, this far right column, we thought we were going to finish the year at about 15,374,000. My new projections are significantly higher than that. Don't hold me to it, because when you predict IGTs, it's always a crapshoot whether the state pays you on time, and the amount they pay you is not a guaranteed exact amount. But anyway, that's based on our current estimates. That's what we're looking at. So we should feel pretty good about our cash position by the end of this fiscal year, even though, as I speak today, our cash position is not anywhere near as good. It's in the 19 million range, 19,943,000, and it's expected to go up by year end to 22 million.
Dave, on that fifth line down on the IGT and other supplemental, for the fiscal year 24 quarter 3, you're reflecting a negative 2,000,003.
Yes.
I was just curious about that.
What that means is one of the process details of how IGTs work is the district has to send a matching fund amount before we actually get paid. The state gets that money, they take 20% of it, and then they give back an amount a little bit more than double of what we paid out. So for example, that 2.3 million is a net, including some amounts that are coming in. Actually, the amount that goes out on the big IGT is actually 3.8 million that is called matching funds. So keep in mind, when we talk about getting a big check in for 10 million or 11 million, that's not the net profit, because we had to pay an amount at the beginning to start that process, and then we get a little bit more than double back, causing the where the gain happens is the difference between what we match and how much we receive in a check at the end of the process. So, but at the beginning, we got to have the money, and that's sometimes a problem for district hospitals. If you don't have the money up front, they don't get to participate in the gain on the back end. So they are not in a position to to receive any IGT money because they don't have the matching funds, which is another important reason why our liquidity helps preserve us to be a candidate that as soon as there's extra money available that one hospital can't participate, we can quickly, confidently tell the health plan, yes, if there's an extra $1 million left over that another hospital didn't have matching funds, we'll take it because we have the extra $500,000 to put up for matching, and it's not a problem for us. And that's the benefit of having the higher liquidity numbers that some district hospitals don't have that luxury. Did I answer that question okay, or is it still
You
confusing?
did, yeah, it's just a timing issue, yeah, okay. Just want to make sure it was a typo.
And I'm spending a lot of time on cash because on the surface, you'd see this as a real downer. Line item 2 on page 10, that our cash went from 21,783,000 down to 19 million. And again, it's all part of what we knew would be happening as we did our monthly cash projections. We knew that we'd have this wild fluctuations this year, and it's not surprising to see it go down by 1.8 million in the month of September. And we're just tracking along the lines of what we normally expect. Generally, what we've seen, especially the last 3 years since I've been here, is the beginning of each fiscal year, the first quarter, even going into October and November, the cash balances go down mostly because we get hardly any big IGT amounts come in during that 4 or 5 month period. And that's so we always have to be planned out so that we still have money enough to pay the bills and those kind of things in our normal checking account, because these amounts coming in aren't as high during certain months. And then when we get the large amounts in, then we have to then make sure when we invest it maturing at a point where we know we're going to need that money a year from now, that we'll have that shortage again during that 3 or 4 month period. So it's an ongoing technical challenge to make sure that we don't get caught with not having the money available when we need it.
The question from my mind is, was this an unanticipated cash fluctuation, or is this because we were paying money out for the project?
Yeah, this is not
Expected.
unanticipated. This
Okay.
pretty much fits what we had in our budgeted cash flow model. I actually budget by month, and this 19 million is actually a little bit even higher than what we thought we'd have at the end of September. So we're tracking pretty close to where we think we need to be. It just happens to be a lot less than what we had at the beginning of the fiscal year. You can see we had 23,849,000 at the end of last fiscal year. So it's down quite a bit, but it's projected to come back almost back to where we had at the end of last year by the time we get to June of 2024. Moving on to the profit loss statement on page 12. So we've got a kind of a technical thing that could easily be confusing. Line 14, we see we want lower the better on expenses, salaries and wages, and we got a real low number compared to budget on salaries and wages. So what's that all about? So I'm going to have to digress into an accounting routine that we go through. The way Chet
Keep it simple.
Yeah, the way Chet and Barbara set up salary accruals is, as you probably know, we have 2 pay periods. Our employees get paid every 2 weeks. So typically in a month, there's 2 pay periods that add up to 28 days. And if I only showed the amounts that went out in those 2 pay periods, I wouldn't be showing a whole month of activity. For example, in September, there's 30 days. If I only added up the 2 pay periods that were paid in September, that would only be 28 days. Well, as it turns out, the last pay period, now going back to August, we had the similar situation, but the last pay period in August, the way Chet set up the CPSI automatically, the computer system automatically does the accrual for us. And basically what the accrual is, it's the difference between the last day in the pay period and the first day of the following month, because none of those dollars are in the general ledger. That there's no cost at all for the last few days, because we didn't pay those employees yet, because they started the new pay period on August 27th. So for 5 days, I have zero until the CPSI does this accrual calculation. Well, the problem is the way they do the accrual calculation, they look at the last pay period in that given month. The month of August had the bonus. So the computer doesn't know this, but it assumed that the last 5 days of August would have a similar average per day of what we had the last pay period, which included an extra 800,000 on that particular pay period. So 5 days, 5 divided by 14 times 800,000 is 271,000 of additional accrual that the computer puts in 1 month, and then the following month it reverses it. So it fixes itself in September to say, well, you really didn't spend the higher amount the last 5 days of the month, so we're gonna reverse that entry and put in the actual amount for August, which means August salaries were overstated by 271, and that causes this number to be understated by slightly over that 300,000 due to that change in accrual. So remember when we were looking at the overall picture last month, it looked pretty dreadful because it looked like our expenses were way over. And that ended up being the reason, is due to that accrual thing that we would have needed to have made a manual adjustment to offset that. And I did not do that in August. So now we're fixing it in September. Is that understandable?
So everything that we're looking at right now, is this an actual number, or is this not?
This is an adjusted number that makes it actual because of the adjustment that had to be made in August. So for example, the new actual year to date, this is the accurate number now. So if I look at year to date salaries on line 14 on page 13, this is the new actual, which is only 560,000 higher than budget, even though the bonus was 760. So now we've got a corrected year-to-date number
Just the adjustment.
that's actually less than what our bonus was. So that now shows us an overall expense structure that's more reasonable, that's not as big of a hole to dig out of as what we were concerned about when we looked at the numbers last month. Because if we look at line 28, we see a favorable variance of 303,000, which means out of that 271, we still had a favorable variance of 30,000 of everything else in the month of September. So this is all actual information. If you take out the 271 that got overstated in August, you're still seeing that we were lower than budget in the month of September by another 30,000. The only line item that I wanted to comment on that's not favorable is 18, purchase services. We've made some big, we've paid for some services that have really made some big improvements on a program called the 340B in our retail pharmacy. And the expenses weren't budgeted. It was like 90,000 we added to the budget, and it's an upfronted type of expense, and we only budgeted 1/12 each month, but it's all come in the first quarter of higher consulting fees to get that 340B program back working again. And the good news is we're seeing 30-40,000 a month in savings and less drug costs since we've gotten these new services put in place. So it'll have a good long-term benefit, but for the time being, we're showing a higher than what we had budgeted on the purchase services due to that program. Other than that, all the other expenses seem to be in line. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about revenues. So going back up to line 3. It's not just long-term care for this month. We also saw some dips on outpatient revenue. I did some analysis on line 3 where we showing 4,566,000 actual compared to 4.9 million budget, and actually is lower than last year as well. The 3 categories that were much lower than budget. See, I got it written down here in my notes. Get the exact amounts. Lab was 185,000 less. And we already talked about surgeries. GI 85,000 in the OR 35,000. So that in total is about 350,000 of that variance of outpatient that didn't materialize. Now lab's been fluctuating back and forth. I assume lab will jump back up again. I don't have any reasons to think that number is going to stay down. But we all know the surgery issues, and maybe some of these new programs, if we get it into place, would be a benefit for the outpatient revenues to come up even higher, because we wouldn't be losing too much by not having the surgeries. So the other item, and I was going to just show you the trend on that outpatient. So you can see we had 5 million, 5 million, almost 5, and then down. So it's pretty consistent on outpatient. So we would expect to see those numbers come back up again. We have seen how long-term care, again, we hope we hit bottom here on this number for September, 1,988,000. That will go back up closer to 2.3, 2.4 million as we start filling up the unit. So you can see it's really most of these variances have to do with line items 3 and 4 for the month. We had a higher budget in acute, but that was much higher than last year. So I don't really look that much at the budget number. We were just slightly below the number on the inpatient side for September. Oh, that actually, this is a year-to-date picture. I'm confusing myself. September's, what I was trying to point out is it really the whole variance on the revenue side just for the month of September had to do with these 2 line items. I was looking at the wrong page. It's line item 3 shows a 343 negative variance, and line item 4, 411. So your entire variance is in those 2 categories, and we talked about what services are included in that and what our likelihood for improvement is. So it's not something that I'm really overly concerned about because we know what the reasons are. We just have to go out and execute better and get those volumes back up again, or maybe look at some different services to take advantage of the square footage that we have available. But other than that, if you really go down to the very bottom of the report, the adjustment on the August 271,000 helped our bottom line to be 329 for the month. And again, you can see no IGT money. And for the year, now we're back up to a positive 140,000, 713 net surplus, which is 150,000 below budget and about 250,000 below last year. So that's kind of where we're at through the first 3 months. Not as much of an expense issue. We do have some productivity targets that we still feel like we can do better on our staffing, and I'll show you where we look at those numbers. I'm going to go down to page 18, and I'm going to look at a line that we want to get, line 23 on page 18. We want to get the paid FTEs per adjusted occupied bed back under 6 again, closer to the industry average of 5.86. We think we can do better than that. Last year we did it at 5.1. So we think we can get there, but it just takes more work working with the departments and getting their amount that they have staffed lined up better to the volumes that are going on in each of those departments.
And to speak to that, one of the things we've done is we've reinstituted the daily productivity report. With a lot of the turnover that we had within the finance office, they stopped doing that several months ago. And so it was harder, because we couldn't see it on daily, the only time we could see it is in the payroll and so forth, and which makes it a little hard to control if you don't know how far you're off. So those have been going out to the managers, and we've been following up with emails to them when they're getting too high on a given day or whatever. And so forth. So in total, from what I'm looking at on a day-to-day basis, I'm seeing some improvements in the department. So I'm expecting this is going to get better. And we've got some, like I said, that Mark and I are working on some things to kind of relook at how we're providing some services in those areas and so forth that will help us reduce some costs as well.
Yeah, so we're heading back, and that's been going on for years and always have had good results. So I expect consider to see those numbers improve. The other area of improvement, line 30, gross days and receivable. A year ago, we were at 91, that's now coming down 79.3. And we can see that report's on page 17, the 79.3 gross days in AR. The collections have stayed strong. We want to see those numbers at 2 million or higher. The last 3 months have all been strong collection months, bringing in the cash on the various payers. So the business office, we're continuing to use committees to improve systems and to make sure that our denials stay at a minimum. And we have seen good. I haven't seen any things pop up since we started that committee as far as new trends in higher denials. In fact, we're seeing denials coming down really nicely, and that should play a good role going forward and show a higher amount of net revenues as we bring the denial percentages down. And that's my report.
Yeah, I just want to thank Amy for her effort to put that productivity report back together. That was important. So thank you.
And thank you to Amy for a really good month-end close, for all the details that are required. That's a lot of training that she had to go through with Barbara. And I thought the month-end close went very smooth, and no numbers jumped out at me as major issues. So I think we're off to a good start with having our new person on the accounting side.
Quick question, Dave. What program do we use for accounting? Is it Peachtree accounting? Or
No, it's CPSI.
or CPSI? Okay.
So someday I could go through and show you the lists of all the different things that she has to do for month-end closing, and you'd be pretty impressed. It's very involved.
I just want to make sure when we do, if there's any adjustments, because this becomes public record.
Yep.
I just don't
Yeah,
want.
and obviously the adjustment, we don't want to see the kind of adjustment I had to make in September for the salary accruals. We want to keep those to a minimum.
Yeah.
I know it was Brad's big concern at the last board meeting was seeing the
Loss of control, but it was an accrual issue,
Yeah,
not
accrual.
was loss of control. Right? So that and I think we all recognize we still have some room to tweak some of that FTE creep that we've talked about before. So we're addressing that.
Okay. Any other questions for Dave before we move on?
I don't have any.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Okay, we'll move on to the local vendor aging report. Amy, it's on page 20. If there's any questions on this one.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Everything's current from what I can see.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
And then page 21 is our monthly contracts review and renewals.
Couple of things that I want to bring up. Several of our position contracts need new paper. Dr. Finstead's, Dr. Lou's, Dr. Gross's 2 contracts, and then also Dr. Spahn. Their contracts officially, because they were 1-year contracts with 2 1-year renewals, which ended in 23. So we want to go ahead and actually just put that on the new contract for another 3-year period.
And on 2 of those contracts, I've already issued 30-day termination notices for
Yours, yeah.
AYA healthcare and therapy staffing.
What are we doing with the Carano thing?
Serrano.
Serrano, that's what I'm trying to say.
It's still being used. They're using it for some of the employee videos on the new people.
Oh, yeah, like
come on board.
Tuesday with
Yeah.
Tiffany, that-
Yes, that's another one. That Wednesday thing with APT, they're filming with that. So that's still being used. That's again a relatively low cost item.
You didn't read about Cyrano's.
So the AYA and the therapy is staffing, we're taking off.
AYA, healthcare and therapy, yes. Whenever I issue one of those termination notices, I give them my contact information if they want to reach out and, renegotiate or look, sign a new contract, but right now, none of the 5 or 6 that I've issued in the last 6 months have wanted to continue.
Yeah.
So no problem. There's only one that keeps knocking our door down.
Yeah, right. It's not one we want, right?
With those changes, are we okay with sending this to the board for consent?
I'm good.
I'm good with it, John.
Okay, we will send that to consent. Okay, that's pretty much it on finance. I did have 3 quick questions though, if that's okay, before we adjourn.
You're the chair.
They don't even have to be quick, John.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
they're just,
We have a meeting at 2:00.
yeah, that's what, well, yeah. Good time, actually. No, I will keep it quick. So for the employees, do we do anything like a 401k or have we looked at anything?
Yeah.
We do a 401k.
Yeah, it's not one 401k, it's
457B.
Oh,
Right.
57,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Because recently I was,
we do a match on that as well.
oh, okay,
That's the one the board
Board
approves every 6
PNP.
months. Yeah.
okay. Which I probably remember maybe doing when I was on the board PNP, I just maybe forgot about it, okay.
It goes to the board on consent, so you probably don't, it doesn't get flagged for you, but it does go through on consent every 6
Okay.
months.
Every 6 months, okay. Somebody that I know in the insurance industry asked about it and said, "Does your hospital do 401ks?" I couldn't remember if we did.
Yeah, it's different version, same
Okay.
thing.
Second question was, since this is related to finance, you brought up the concern that the governor had signed the salary increase for.
Yes.
So should we as a board maybe do like a lobbying letter or something to get the Medi-Cal reimbursement rate to see if that would have any effect to?
Always,
that?
I think it's always a good idea, to make those feelings known to the governor and stuff like that. The governor, there was a bill that the governor took some money down and passed back to the hospitals. I can't remember, it was 100. Dave, do you remember what the amount the governor took out of the budget to put back to the hospitals? I can't remember, it was
$100.
no. It was a different one.
How many billion? There's
Yeah, there was a couple $1 billion that he put, again, which will somehow trickle back to us.
I think they're still debating how to do that yet, and
Yeah,
it's
so
gonna
that
probably,
hasn't shown up yet. And then, like I said, there is some new funding program coming down, which we anticipate, I believe, is for 2025, that will affect our hospital as an additional revenue stream. For being public and rural and some of those things. And so it's on top of the IGT and so forth. So there's some things being done, but again, it's always they still have not effectively increased the Medi-Cal rates. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I think the Hospital Association is pursuing that as they have for many years and trying to get that done. I know that one of the strategies they had when they were trying to work with the unions was that the unions were going to lobby on our behalf to try and raise the funding for healthcare and to pay for some of the healthcare costs and so forth. Of course, at the same time, but they were hoping to be able to negotiate higher wages for the nurses so that they could get more money for their contracts. But anyway, I digress. But yes, there's certainly some things going on, but absolutely it pays to do that. We are already, Dave and I, this morning, we've already got a strategy in place for how we're looking to figure out what we're gonna do in response to that $18 minimum coming in June. And so forth. Fred has asked us to have a plan back to the board by January 1st, just 6 months before we have to do that. And so, or 5 months before we have to do that. So, we'll have plenty of chance to, tweak that as we go forward and stuff like that. So our hope is to have it done well before January 1st.
And typically every year in our budget, we have between 500,000 and 600,000 available for pay increases, hospital wide. So one of the starting points on all that is that 500,000 or 600,000 number is more likely to have to be closer to $1 million, $1.1 million, so that everybody can get an increase and not just the lower end people that we get up to minimum wage, but we also try to give all our employees something at least close to the cost of living adjustment, the COLA percentage. That's not likely to occur, but we want to get something as close as possible. But that number is going to result in a much higher number in next year's budget, that is allocated toward pay increases, just so that we are trying to be fair to our employees. But in order to do that, we obviously, in theory, should be expecting, more revenues from the government because they're the ones telling us to do this.
In all likelihood, we're not going to be able to pass those kinds of, increases onto employees, especially the higher paid employees. That's where we're going to see the biggest compression. And so, we are going to have to address the mid-level issues because of such a big increase on the low end, and so forth. And, I've asked Dave to put an analysis together on an employee by employee basis, because like I said, we can go in and blanketly look at, here's what we paid for CNAs, for example, but in that pool of CNAs, I've got some brand new people that just started and some people that have been working here for 30 years as a CNA. And so clearly you're not starting everybody at $18. You may have some that are going to start at $20 an hour just because of the fact they've been here so long. So we've got to look at that range and where they fall into those ranges when we consider this increase. And so that's where you really start seeing some of the compression to the mid-level when there's that much going on at the low end. So it's going to be a challenge, but like I said, we're going to try to do the best we can to keep that overall hit to us as controllable as we can. So
Okay. I'm sure we'll have a more detailed conversation.
you will. Definitely.
Okay. And then just my third quick question. We talked a little bit about it during this meeting, but Dave, how's the product line document?
Yeah, it's a little bit on hold right now because we're on this transition with Barbara, and I'm hoping you have patience. I'm going to try to get it back going again at the beginning of next year. Is that soon enough?
Well, the chairs might change by then, but I'm sure we'll probably see.
I think the plan was to try and get something sooner than that.
Yeah.
I could try for next month if I got to etch out some time with Tim so that we can get on the same page. I'll try to, if so, that I will make a strong attempt that next month.
I don't think you're far off. I just think we need to sit down, you just review it with me. So, but
yeah, when we did look at it last month, I did think it was an important document, especially when we're talking about volumes, FTEs, that kind of thing. Of course, we hadn't seen it in a couple of years since Chet hadn't been here, but even in progress, that's fine too. At least it'll give us a snapshot of what's going on.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that. I can see it's important, and we'll make sure it happens.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So I had anything else before we adjourn?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. All right, we're adjourned at 1:44. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.